As you walk down Maple Avenue towards Hill 62, you come to Sanctuary Wood British Cemetery. Now, considering the Canadian battle here in June of 1916, you'd think this would be full of Canadian dead, and there are Canadian headstones here, mainly of unidentified soldiers. The vast majority of the dead from June 1916 in that battle involving the 3rd Canadian Division, they're commemorated on the Menin Gate Memorial at Ypres. But here, this is a cemetery that covers a wide period of the war with a central original plot and then organised rows of graves which were burials brought in after the war. And we find here a good representation of the different units that served through this part of Flanders. Some of those men from the flamethrower attacks of 1915, some of the Canadians, but many other regiments and corps of the British Army and of the Empire, the Commonwealth forces as well. In this part of the cemetery, we go from orderly graves to a more staggered arrangement of graves at the back of the cemetery. And what we're looking at here are the original burials from 1915. This ground was pulverised by shell fire in the battles of June 1916, and many of these graves were lost, which is why we see a lot of special memorials on the edge of the cemetery along the cemetery wall. Special memorials commemorate men known to be buried in the cemetery, but his exact location of their grave is not known. These say buried elsewhere in this cemetery. As we come down through these staggered graves at the back of the cemetery, the original burials, we come to the grave of Lieutenant Gilbert Talbot of the Rifle Brigade. I've come here to see the grave of Lieutenant Gilbert Talbot of the Rifle Brigade. He was killed in the flamethrower attack of the 30th of July 1915. His brother Neville was a padre behind the lines at Popperinga, and together with another padre, Tubby Clayton, they opened a house for soldiers to come and have a place of refuge when they were out of the line, a place where you could go to a quiet room and write a letter, read a book. Eventually there would be Charlie Chaplin films in the cellar, a music hall out the back, and up in the hop loft a chapel where you could attend religious services. They thought about calling it Church House, but in the end they thought that was overtly religious and called it Talbot House instead, after Lieutenant Gilbert Talbot killed here at Hooge, the brother of Neville. And his grave faces towards Popperinga, faces towards Talbot House. Gilbert Talbot's brother, Neville Talbot, survived the war. He went right through as an army chaplain. And when he went home, he married and had children. His son, who was born just after the war, was named Gilbert in memory of his brother, who'd been killed here in Flanders in 1915. A generation later, in World War II, he too went to war and became a lieutenant, just like his uncle, in the Rifle Brigade. He served with them in Normandy and was killed by mortar fire there in July 1944. So sadly, there are two headstones in the care of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission that bear the same name, Lieutenant Gilbert Talbot, both in the Rifle Brigade, both killed in the month of July, one in 1915, here in the Great War, and the other in Normandy in 1944. The loss to some families in both world wars was just simply staggering. The memorial to Lieutenant Keith Rae commemorates a comrade of Gilbert Talbot who was also killed in the flamethrower attack of July 1915. Originally this stood on the lip of a mine crater over on the high ground of the Bellewaarde Ridge near Hooge, and it was moved here I think in the 1950s or 60s to make sure that it was permanently preserved when that area was redeveloped. It's one of a large number of private memorials on the battlefields of the Great War to individual soldiers who were killed and were commemorated on the spot or close to the spot by their family. So Keith Rae has no known grave. He's commemorated on the Menin Gate Memorial at Ypres.